Hello, my name's Giles Whitehead, and I'm going to be talking to a fellow artist today, Paul Morris. Paul is best known for his rhythmic and lyrical watercolor paintings, featuring musicians and musical instruments from a wide range of cultures. His work's featured in exhibitions in New York and Los Angeles, as well as around the country in art vending machines. With an instantly recognizable style, his art has been spotted in the backgrounds of TV programs, gathering fans and collectors from across the globe. Welcome, Paul Morris, AKA Pollux.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
It's very nice to have you here today, Paul. So, can you tell us something about yourself and your background?
Sure. I was actually born in your neck of the woods in England, in a town called Beverley. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's in Yorkshire, in the East Riding of Yorkshire. My father's Welsh. My mother's from the Canary Islands, from Tenerife. They met and married in England, and we came to the United States in 1980. So I grew up in California, and I sort of had a mixture of European parents, the background of having European parents, but growing up in an American environment. So it was an interesting mix of cultures, and maybe from that clash, something awakened in my mind, perhaps, to create the art that I create. But who knows? It's hard to explain that stuff sometimes. So yeah, I grew up in Culver City, California. I went to UCLA for my bachelor's degree in history and a minor in Latin. And then I went to the East Coast at Brown for my master's in history. And now I create art.
I can kind of see that European influence in your work. It makes me think, and not that it's really like it, but it does make me think of Miro a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I like his work a lot. Yeah, my parents, stocked our house with a lot of art books and just books in general, and Miro was one of the books that I would always look at. So yeah, he probably influenced me a lot, subconsciously, maybe a little consciously as well. I saw his work at Barcelona with my parents. I just like his use of shapes and color. Picasso, of course. People have noticed the similarity there as well. Like Picasso's famous piece, I think it's called Three Musicians, sort of has that same sort of style. I don't have the same style as Magritte, but his style is more realistic, photorealistic. But I like his playful nature. I've been to the Magritte Museum in Brussels, and that was pretty interesting and amazing to see his work. But yeah, I like his playful, surreal nature. I mean, basically any of the surrealists like Salvador Dali and people like that, just pushing the boundaries of what was then, not considered acceptable art, and now is considered, they're considered masterpieces. Just anyone who just approaches art in a sort of playful, imaginative way, and just pushing the boundaries is an inspiration for me.
Well, that's it. But you've got very much your own style, and it's immediately recognizable. So, how did you first get into art, and what's your favorite tool and medium, and why?
I mean, I was always one of those kids that my parents could give some pencils and crayons to, and a piece of paper, and just I could entertain myself for hours. Which, being a parent myself, is a godsend to any parent. A kid that can just entertain himself. Well, as a kid, I would draw all sorts of things, just things that I saw, or just things from my imagination, and it's something I always did, and then it sort of tapered off a little bit in college because I thought it wasn't like a serious thing to do, and I devoted myself all entirely to my studies. The only drawing I did was really on in the margins of my notes during class, but it was sort of a dormant thing for a while during my college years, sort of waiting to come out again. By the end of my academic career, I decided I did not want to be a historian. It just didn't feel like it was my passion. Sort of an undercurrent of something wasn't completely right. I mean, I enjoy history and very much. I continue to read a lot of history books today, but I didn't want to make it my career. And this thing that I was always working on in the margins, literally, just came out more to the forefront. And in grad school, I started doing a comic strip for the Brown newspaper, the Daily Herald, and I would spend hours working on that when I probably should have been working on papers and or going to sleep. And I was just following my bliss. And I think by the time my academic career was over, I decided to devote myself fully to something that I was spending most of my time doing anyway. And that's where my passion was and what I wanted to do. That was back in 2002. So, I haven't looked back since then and just been trying to develop my craft since then.
So, as with all artists, I'm guessing your journey has not been straightforward. What's been the biggest learning experience for you in helping you find your unique place in the world?
These days, people want everything to happen so quickly in terms of success and career. I think the greatest lesson I could teach myself and maybe advise to others as well is just to be patient. It takes time. You're not going to develop a style overnight. You're not going to be successful overnight. You have to be okay with that. For me, the journey's lasted 20 years. I didn't start really selling art until 2013 or so. So by that point, I'd already been plugging away for more than a decade before I started creating things that people actually wanted to buy. So I would say, that you have to be patient. You have to work at your crafts every day and not expect immediate monetary or sort of fame and fortune right away. If monetary success or sort of publicity or anything like that, you have to be okay with just working alone as if you were a monk, and just work at your craft, and that's all that should matter, and everything else will come later if you're devoted enough.
So while you're getting to the point of selling art, have you done other jobs alongside doing your art?
Yes, I've worked at a software company for 20 years as my day job, just working in customer care. And that's provided the stability and just the space that I needed to work on my craft without worrying about how I was going to eat the next day or how I was going to pay my rent or clothe myself it just, I think it's important to have a day job, also that working in an office, gets a bad rap, but I think for an artist, it's important to stay connected to human society and not work alone. If you're just in your own head the whole time, just working on your own in your own apartment without any exposure to human life or society, I don't think that helps your work. I think you need people. You have to develop as a person as a whole, I think, to develop as an artist as well. You just can't just devote 100% of yourself to just being an artist. You have to be a human too, a successful human.
Definitely. So why does music feature particularly in your art, and how do you get inspiration for new pieces?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm not a musician myself. I did play the clarinet when I was younger. Yeah, I was in the marching band and stuff, but I honestly, I don't know. I remember one of the first drawings I did when I was a kid was of a band, a musical band. I think I like the idea of different musicians working together to create a single musical piece or symphony. Everyone has their role to play, from the drummer to the guitarist to person playing the kettle drums. I think I like the idea of just different figures, using their instruments with such passion and skill to create a single thing. It's just the idea of people working together is, in harmony, literally and figuratively, is interesting to me. Just seeing an orchestra with everyone just doing everything so skillfully and in coordination is a nice message for humanity in general. I think, if we just all work together. I know that sounds a little corny, but it's just great to see people working together with such an interest in their instruments and passion, just to create something beautiful. And in terms of what instrument I'm going to decide to draw that day, friends and family have messaged me or talked to me, have you drawn this instrument before? And I might say yes or no, or I haven't drawn that instrument in a while. Sometimes it's one that I've never completely ever heard of, and so I want to try my hand at drawing it. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel like drawing something more woodwind based, like a clarinet or bassoon, and sometimes I feel more jazzy, so I just want to do like a trumpet or a flugelhorn or something just in metallic, so to speak. So it might depend on my mood. It just might depend on just sort of an academic interest of, oh, that's an interesting instrument. I've never heard of that before. I want to try my hand at drawing that. It just sort of depends.
Your work features lots of unusual musical instruments. This is what I like, just discovering all the interesting names. What is your current favorite unusual musical instrument discovery, and why?
Yeah, there have been a few. There's a lot of interesting ones that, I mean, once I started drawing musical art, I sometimes I would purposely look for interesting instruments to draw just to challenge myself. There's some that I had never heard of before. There's some that I had seen, but I didn't know what their names were. An interesting one is the octobass. It's an enormous bass. It's almost 13 feet high. It's bigger than a person. You actually, from the pictures I've seen, you actually have to stand on a stool just to play it. It looks like an enormous double bass, and I've tried my hand at drawing it. If I have big enough paper, then I can pull it off. But that's an interesting one. There's an instrument called the goofus, which was popular in the 1920s, which basically looks like a little toy saxophone, but it could be played like a saxophone, in terms of just holding it vertically, but you could play it horizontally too, like a harmonica. And so that was quite popular in the 1920s, and then it sort of faded away. But I wanted to draw that and maybe bring it back into vogue, or there's so many the electrical instruments like the theremin. That's always a popular one, and it has such an interesting sound. It's a good one for the Halloween season, which just ended. Just it has a sort of spooky, eerie feel to it. The sound, and you have to sort of be a magician and not even touch the instrument directly, and just sort of use your hands to play it. And that's an interesting instrument as well. The electrical instruments are interesting to draw because they have a lot of buttons and a lot of functions that are mysterious, and I can also paint the buttons in different colors and stuff, so hopefully it comes out, because a lot of these electrical instruments are usually just gray, black and white, and I'll try to bring them into more vibrant color. But yeah, there's so many interesting instruments. I have tried to draw stuff from around the world. The ukulele obviously features a lot in my work. That has a great sound, and it's great for the summer. It's sort of a summer sound. It just reminds me of the beach and just good times. Yeah, I just look for anything new and just try to draw it and just challenge myself. I don't want to always keep drawing the same thing. It's fun to draw new things.
Yeah, that is brilliant, and it's very, very fascinating to look and discover all those instruments in your work. I really like that. Something that brings an extra layer of charm and intrigue to your work is your titles, such as Bombazine Island, The Soul of a Sea Urchin, or The Suppressed Hiccups. Can you talk us through the process of titling your work? And if someone was racking their brain for a great band title, would you be happy for them to use one of yours?
Sure, for a price. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe I'm not. I'd be honored if they used my name, one of my names for a band. There's a California band called Toad the Wet Sprocket that their name derives from a Monty Python skit, and I've read that Eric Idle was very honored that they chose that name for their band. Yeah, so the process of titling the work is interesting because in the beginning, when I first started, my pieces had just straightforward names, oboist, bassoonist, trumpeter, and that was it. And then it was hard to keep them, track of them, and just it didn't seem that interesting. I thought it would be fun to actually give them sort of interesting, colorful names. I mean, they derive from a lot of sources. A lot of them come from conversations with my wife. She has the same weird sense of humor that I do, and we might be talking about something very strange or just from life, or just something that happened to us on our travels, and she'll often say, you should name a piece that, and I think about it, and then I say, and then I agree, and need to do it, because otherwise she'll scold me if I don't. Yeah, it's some of them are just passing by a street and seeing that that's an interesting name. There was one I did recently called Dianthus Giants. Dianthus was a street name that I saw on the way to the doctor's office, and it's the name of a flower. I just thought it had a nice ring to it. Also, Our Lady of the Angels was another name that I used recently. That was driving through downtown Los Angeles. It's the name of the cathedral down there. I just thought that was a good name for a piece. I usually have the name first, and then I create the piece to match it. Sometimes I have a piece and it doesn't have a name, but it's usually the reverse. I have the name first, and then I have to create a piece that sort of matches it. And the name itself will kind of inform what instrument I'm going to draw or what colors I'm going to use. There's some names that have a certain feel to them. If it's something from nature, like a tree name, I feel like it needs to have a sort of wood-based instrument to match it, like a violin or a bassoon, like one of the woodwinds. But if it's a sort of metallic or urban name, that maybe something that like refers to locomotives, or just something more metallic or jazzy, then I'm not going to use a clarinet or a fiddle. I'm going to use a trumpet or a trombone. I'm going to use colors that are a little more metallic looking, like purple and blue and gray. It's the name sign that sort of informs the piece. And so it's actually a great creative tool to have a sort of reserve of names. I usually have 3 or 4 just in reserve, and that helps me a lot create the piece. I'm just one of those people who likes words and names. And if I see a name or a word or hear a phrase that I like, I'll write it down and use, that's material for a piece. I had a cold this week, and my wife told me, you have to feed a cold and starve a fever. I was like, oh, that's a good name for a piece. So I'll have to create that when I'm feeling better. I'm going to create a piece called Feed a Cold, Starve a Fever. And I don't know what musicians would match for that, but it's something to think about.
I love that. It's so poetic. One thing that excites me and interests me, which I don't think is available in our country, but your work can be found on small blocks of wood dispensed from art vending machines called Artomat. I love the idea of Artomat vending machines. Can you tell us what Artomat is and how did you become involved?
Yeah, I definitely can't take credit for that brilliant idea. It was started in 1997 by an artist from North Carolina called Clark Whittington. Basically, he took an old cigarette machine that, this was around the time when they started being banned and, discarded. But he thought the machine itself was an interesting shape. And instead of dispensing cigarettes, he decided to refit them as art dispensing machines. So he takes old cigarette vending machines and turns them into something new. He keeps the structure of the machine, so it still has that sort of vintage look of old cigarette machines. But now you put maybe a token, depending on the venue. You pull a lever and a piece of art comes out on a block that's shaped exactly the same as an old cigarette pack. Yeah, it's a great opportunity for artists to be involved. I think he is. I think there are some venues around the world. I think I'm don't quote me on this, but I think there might be some in Australia and I think Austria too. But so I think eventually it might showing up in other places besides the United States. But yeah, I mean, I found out about it in 2012. My friend Gloria had just been to Las Vegas, and one of the hotel casinos there, the Cosmopolitan, has a few machines actually, and she brought back this piece of art that she had purchased and showed it to me, and she said, "You should do this." And I looked it up, and I thought, yeah, I should. It gives a good opportunity for an artist because basically you have to meet the specifications of it being the same shape as the cigarette machine. So a cigarette box, I should say. So it can be a hollowed out thing where you have art inside, or the shape itself can be the art. So that's what I've done. I get pieces of wood cut out by sort of a wood making business. They sell and cut wood for you, House of Hardwood. And so I paint directly onto the wooden block, and it's the same size as a cigarette box. And I paint my musicians, on them. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a great thing to do for an artist. And he has Clark Whittington, puts these machines everywhere. They're in museums, bars, restaurants, casinos, and it's a lot of fun to put money in or token and just pull the lever and get a piece of art. I have art from other artists, from an Artomat machine, and it's fun to look for them because he has a map on his website telling you where the machines are. So when my wife and I went to Portland, for example, we looked for the machines, and it's got a sort of treasure hunt, scavenger hunt aspect to it as well. You have to look for the machine. It might be tucked away somewhere at a restaurant or museum, and then when you see it, it's very satisfying, and then you get a piece of art, and it's a better souvenir than getting a magnet or a shirt. This is something. It's unique. It's a piece of art that no one else owns, and once you own a little piece of art, you're sort of an art collector. I encourage everyone to look it up if they can and to participate.
I think it's a brilliant repurposing. So do you have any upcoming projects? What are you working on?
Yeah, I'm continuing to do the Artomat project. I have to get another batch out. So yeah, I'm staying out of mischief. I'm always staying busy and just working on different things, and just I sort of jump from project to project to keep things fresh. And if I'm tired of working on one thing, I switch to another, and just that's how you sort of keep everything fresh, so you don't get tired of just doing the same thing over and over again.
So true. Well, thank you very much, Paul, for talking to us today. It's been really fascinating. And I hope everyone's really keen to have a look at your work. And where can you tell us, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, Instagram. My handle is at Paul Morris Pollux. You can find me there. That's where I post new pieces fairly regularly. I also, my website is www.worldofpollux.com. If they want to buy pieces, which is great, the link is in the Instagram profile but I can be found at Etsy. It's www.etsy.com/shop/worldofpollux, and that takes you to my store where you can buy pieces. And the reasonably priced. So check it out.
We definitely will. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you
for joining us today.
Enjoyable. Thank you so much.
Thank you.